So thank you, everyone. The morning has just started out amazingly well, and the next panel is going to be wonderful. As you heard yesterday, Larry Galizio, the president and CEO of the Community College League of California, was under the weather and was not able to moderate this morning's panel on interinstitutional well-being efforts, and so our wonderful managing editor of Learning Well magazine and associate director of the Coalition for Transformational Education, or the Wellbeing, the Learning Well Coalition, Dana Humphrey, is going to come up and she's going to moderate and then introduce our next panel. So please welcome our next panel. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for allowing me to step in. We also have a little bit of a change to this panel. Not only was Larry not able to make it, but Gerard Senahi, who was originally on the program that you were all sent ahead of time, was also not able to make it. So we have had someone step in at the last minute to give us a little on-campus context. So just to start, our panelists that will be joining us, Nancy Roy is the Chief Clinical Officer at the Jed Foundation and Assistant Clinical Professor at Yale School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. She has over 20 years of experience as a psychologist working in college mental health. She's been actively involved in college strategic planning initiatives focused on a holistic approach to education, crisis management, and a public health model for delivery of care on college campuses. Through her work with the Jed Foundation, Dr. Roy has worked on mental health initiatives with the former Surgeon General, the Higher Ed Mental Health Alliance, the Department of Defense, the Veterans Administration, and the Clinton Health Matters Initiative in college and university systems across the country. Welcome, Nancy. Lori Collins-Hall is the project director at Endeavor Lab Colleges. She's a scholar practitioner with nearly 30 years of experience in higher education, community-based and project-based service learning, evaluation research, consulting, and grant writing with a broad spectrum of not-for-profit organizations and institutions. In 2023, the Endeavor Lab Colleges, which we'll be hearing a lot more about, invited Dr. Collins-Hall to serve as the project director for the Endeavor Lab College Mental Health and Wellness Project. Thanks, Nancy. Integrating mental health and well-being to enhance student success at some of the nation's smallest liberal arts colleges. And our newest panelist, added yesterday, thank you so much for jumping in, is Matt Vossler. Dr. Matt Vossler has been working in the outdoor industry for the past 20 years. He's currently an assistant professor of outdoor leadership at Warren Wilson College. His research focuses on developing more creative and empowered leaders both in and out of outdoor spaces. And as part of the Endeavor Collaborative, he's focused his efforts on connecting students with outdoor spaces through NatureRx and nature-based programming to develop opportunities to empower learners with understanding and skills to support their mental health and well-being. So join me in welcoming these panelists to the stage. So I was late and didn't have time to get hooked up with a mic, so I'm just going to use this one. So if you could all, beyond what I just quickly said, briefly introduce yourselves and your organizations and initiatives. We'll start with you, Nancy.
Sure. So I'm Nancy Roy. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at the Jed Foundation. And for those of you who are not familiar with Jed, although I certainly hope everyone in this room is very familiar with Jed, we are a nonprofit that promotes mental health toward the end of reducing suicide among teens and young adults. We work quite a bit with colleges and universities across the country to look at their policies, programs, and systems that do just that. And I'll be talking a little bit more about our work. We were founded about 26 years ago by a couple, Donna and Phil Satow, whose son Jed died by suicide when he was in college. So when they met actually with the upper administration of that university, they genuinely asked Donna and Phil, what would you have us do? You know, we're an institution of, 20, 30,000 students. What should we be doing? And, that long ago, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about college student mental health, and certainly not suicide in college, even though today we know it's the second leading cause of death. So it really motivated Donna and Phil to take the initiative to start the foundation, and here we are today.
Thank you. Lori. I'm Lori Collins Hall, and as Dana said, I've spent 30 years in higher education, and I spent 20 years as a faculty member and then provost and also a president of a college. And through that, the sort of through line or theme for me has always been college student mental health and wellness, and also collaboration and really connecting and breaking down the relationships between sometimes faculty-centered and faculty work with students, even where faculty work is student-centered, and our understanding of what the roles of student life are, and finding the spaces where those are unique, and then finding the spaces where collaboration is really what supports the student experience the best. And I was deeply honored when the Endeavor Foundation offered to support this grant for small liberal arts colleges. The foundation started working with the presidents of these colleges in 2016, and most recently, as Dana said, in 2023, asked us if there was an issue that we were struggling with for which we thought collaboration and our group strengths would help us be more successful than working independently on the issues. And within seconds, all of the presidents, as you know, who noted in surveys, mental health was the leading cause of some of their anxiety on their campuses, came together around that issue. And ever since then, we've had campuses working on that. You will find in your flyer a longer write-up and a list of our colleges, but we're really excited to be here and to share that work with you today. And Matt's one of our project committee leads, so we'll talk more about the project.
Yeah, and Matt, I just wanted to quickly introduce yourself and talk about your work with the Endeavor Lab colleges.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for having me here today. My name is Matt Vossler. I teach at Warren Wilson College currently, and I teach outdoor leadership. And so a lot of my work throughout my career has been focused on getting people into naturalized spaces to not only reconnect with others in those spaces, but reconnect with themselves. As part of my work at Warren Wilson College, I've been able to be part of, we're a work college, so we've got a student-led school in many ways, and so we have these little crews, which are working groups of students, and so I get to be the supervisor for the wellness crew. I have a background in wilderness therapy. I've worked for Outward Bound. I've worked for a lot of wonderful organizations in the outdoor industry and been able to teach at a few different institutions. And so as becoming onboarded onto this project, we've got different thematic areas, one of which is a place-based thematic area focusing on reconceptualizing and really re-identifying our spaces on our campuses where students can go to find refuge spaces. And so we're doing a lot of different work around that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But, I think that, especially as I think about my own mental health journey and the spaces, during COVID, where did we go in order to reconnect with ourselves and get some space was usually in outdoor spaces. And especially with a generation of students that are finding challenges across identity and across their experience of connecting with these spaces, it's been a wonderful opportunity to be able to revitalize some of that work and especially find these spaces and places on our campus.
Thank you all. So we'll start with a question for you, Lori, about how your work with the Endeavor Lab colleges addresses the formation of identity, agency, and purpose, which the coalition's all about, in a way that has deep traction for students.
Yeah. So for us, identity, agency, and purpose for students is really central to our sense of their well-being. And, as Matt said, even connecting people with nature as part of their identity or helping them find accessible ways that they might connect with nature if that's not been a part of their experience. We have 4 working groups that as Matt referenced, curriculum, purposeful life and work, place-based experiential education, and then one on expanded services. And thematically through all of those, we use 9 dimensions of well-being that tie deeply to helping students figure out and highlight their identity, find purpose in their academic program, in the work program or the internships, and then later career opportunities that they want to do, and really thinking about what grounds them in that purpose and how do they develop that sense of that, and how might that change over a lifetime. And then also find their own agency and voice in both advocating for and informing what they need on their campuses around mental health and wellness, as well as being able to ask for what they need across their lifespan and career.
Thank you. It's so refreshing to see schools come together and address mental health in this way. And Nancy, I know you feel the same. We had a prep call, the three of us here, and they were fast friends and have so much in common. So I wonder if you have any comment on that piece of the formation of identity agency.
Yeah, so, as I listened to Lori and I've heard more about the Endeavor Project, which I strongly encourage you to read that handout because it's a phenomenal project. And I should say Jed also has a handout in the folder that you can take a look at. But one of the things, so I should preface by saying our signature program at Jed is the Jed Campus Program. Mm-hmm. And we work with, right now, over 500 colleges and universities across the country in our comprehensive approach, which I think supports pretty much everything that you're trying to do in the collective with the Endeavor Project. And those include things like helping students develop life skills, a sense of connectedness and belonging, helping institutions and their constituent faculty, staff, and students to identify students who might be struggling, looking at help seeking and increasing help seeking, as we've talked about, looking at direct services that you may provide, crisis procedures, medical leaves, return from leaves when people need time away, means safety. And we find that with the schools that we're working with, that evidence-based comprehensive approach really helps to support all of the things that your schools in particular, but all of our colleges and universities that we're working with, helps to make that work move. And I will say in terms of collectives, we've been fortunate more recently to have cohorts come together. So we work with many schools individually, one-on-one. It's a 4-year initiative. But we have recently had a number of states come in as a collective, like states in the state of Georgia, Utah, community colleges of Connecticut. There's more. I'm sure I'm missing quite a few. But we find that when groups come together, we also have some donors, for example, who may have, one in particular lost a child to suicide who was an art and design student, so they wanted to fund art and design schools. And when we have cohorts come together, whether it's a state or a specific type of school, or geographic area someone may want to support, the learning is really incredible. I mean, it's great to do the work one-on-one, but there's also some power in the learning community that happens when you work with us as a cohort group. And I think actually it was Doug last night talking about the power of cohorts and really bringing people together to think about not always reinventing the wheel by yourself and learning from one another strategies and programs and policies that have worked and things you can take away from each other, as well as what we can bring to you from the Jed Foundation. So we found that to be a very powerful experience as well.
I think that's been central to our collaboration. We are some of the nation's smallest schools, and we are buffered from some challenges that people have in higher education, particularly now, but then we also feel others very deeply. And I think, the nature of the project that we structured addresses those components that you refer to, Nancy, in really different ways. The first part was we recognized that the campuses were very variable in the access to services and ability to meet their needs of their students, even though they were all small. And when I'm talking about small, I'm talking about campuses that are sub 850 or or, with probably an average enrollment size across us of around 500, in some campuses as low as 100. So really variable in what we could provide for students. And so we started with a capacity building program just to help support meeting some of the basic needs that many of our campuses take for granted, including, as the students referenced in the last panel, 24/7 telehealth being a real opportunity for our campuses. A lot of our campuses are rural. And so access to counselors that share affinity groups is really important for our students, but not always possible, and times and wait times for support services can often be lengthy, even though you have a small college population. And then the other component that we put together was the learning, because we really recognize that all of these campuses have really talented experts that are doing a lot of great work connecting student well-being on a variety of spectrums. And so we want to really tap that shared experience and shared expertise and take out that often challenging component of the economy of scale, which is that all of us have to do all of the same things every single time, and often by ourselves, because we also have this little competitive nature to us, and really bring that into the room and say, where can the capacity building help us level the playing field amongst us, so that's not so variable. And then once we do that, what is it that is still common gaps for us and opportunities for really sharing and building within those four categories that we talked about. And we've spent the last 14 months exploring that to build those strengths that you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you for that comment about sort of working together as a community and the opportunities that you can, whoopsie daisy, that you can that you can get from that. I think it was Graham that was talking. Someone was talking yesterday about that competitive piece and not invented here and that piece, and it really eliminates that. So you started creeping into my second question. I don't really need to be here. But Matt, do you have a comment about that? Does that resonate with you, that elimination of some of the competition and working together?
Yeah, and I think, one of the advantages of being in this collaborative with other small schools is, there's a lot of challenges working in these small schools. Our faculty body is the size of some of y'all's departments, and
It's true.
and so this concept of capacity and my calendar ends up looking like a wonderful mosaic most weeks, and understanding that together we get to spread out a lot of the challenges we really face, or that competition starts to take a really back seat and say, okay, we're really trying to serve our students in a really meaningful way. And, all of us are idea rich, but time poor often. And so one thing that this collaborative has really been able to do is create these cohorts around a shared problem that we're facing and bring a lot more minds into that. We can spread out a lot of those challenges amongst ourselves.
Thank you. So I want to talk also about the challenges of working across institutions, because, there are differences amongst them, getting all on the same wavelength. So I'll start with you, Lori. What challenges have you faced in bringing institutions together to work towards the same goal?
Yeah, I think Matt just hit on a big one, and it's time, and it's that sense of trying to create amongst a group that's now coming together new around this topic, a sense really helping them understand how this has been a topic they've been talking about and addressing all along, and now we're going to dig into it more deeply rather than one more thing we have to do. Really looking at the development of campus culture and change, the holistic model of where it ties to policy, curriculum, services, and all of that. So time is one factor. I think the other factor that we named really early on was the differences in culture of our campuses, right? And wanting to create, we're not looking to create, as sometimes happens in collaboratives, like one proscriptive thing that then everybody has to adopt. We really recognize we have 4 working colleges in our group, 4 work colleges. We have 4 environmental colleges in our group. We have 2 colleges with single majors. I mean, that variability is huge. They come from different legacies and things. So we really wanted to design initiatives that would be repeatable across campuses and able to do and learn from each other's experience, but also be able to be tailored to those cultures and be more effective in that way. And I think the third component that I would add as a challenge is our geographic location. Often we choose to partner with people who are geographically or within a similar institutional universe as ours, right? The community colleges in a state, or the colleges and schools in our university, right? And here, in addition to the culture challenges, we also have geographic challenges. We have college in Maine, College of the Atlantic. We have Northland College in Wisconsin. We've got St. John's and Prescott down in Arizona, New Mexico region, right? We have Warren Wilson in Appalachia and everything in between. And so if you saw our logo on our posters last night, the network that you see reflected there is sort of the distinction of that geographic location. And so figuring out ways to really get together and to really share our experiences and how they're unique and how they're similar has been a challenge for us. We were joking that this conference is actually the first time that we've met in person, but Matt and I have become fast friends over the last 14 months, meeting bi-weekly. Well, we meet weekly on Zoom.
We have a lot to learn from you, I think, as a coalition, as we are bringing schools together. I wonder about your experience, Nancy. You work across institutions in a very different way, but you do have sort of must-haves of the JED model, and you bring it across institutions that have very different cultures and demographics. So how do you do that? How do you maintain those must-haves across institutions?
Well, I'm not sure if I would say, I guess I would say must-haves. If you look at and I invite you to go to our website or just Google JED Campus, and you'll see our model, which is graphically depicted in the form of a wheel with all of those domains I mentioned a minute ago. And so you're right, when we work with schools and we do an initial assessment, or we ask the team that we work with to do an assessment of, do you have this, in life skills? Do you have this in connectedness around the wheel? What we find, so of course we want schools to really think about how they can enhance their work in all of those domains. But how you do that and how much you can do is very customized and different from institution to institution. We have schools that are, have a multidisciplinary team that works with us that may be 15 people, because they're a large group, athletics, Greek life, legal, security, operations, your usual student affairs suspects, president, provost, dean, VPs, and then we'll have other institutions that may have 4 people who work with us, or 2 people who work with us, because their organizational design is very different and their size is very different. What we do after we look at the policies, programs, and systems, and also what your students say is happening on the campus through the Healthy Minds study, which is part of our program as well, is come to campus and meet with the team. And I emphasize this because this is where customization happens. We can say, okay, these are the things we found that you're doing really, really well. And these are the areas where you could pay attention to doing some enhancement, right? Based on what you've told us and what your students have told us. But how you do that and what you prioritize and what's going to work on your campus may be very different than what's going to work on the campus down the street or the campus, on another part of the country. So it's really that partnership with the actual boots on the ground that helps us as an organization work with you in a way that's going to make sense and be effective for your unique institution. And so the strategic plan we developed together, really based on that feedback from the folks on the ground at the institution. Okay, so these are the things we found in the data, but now how are we going to help you with your level of resources, with your level of not just financial resources, because most of the things that we work with schools to do are little to no cost, but capacity in terms of personnel and staffing and timing is often more of the challenge. And so we have to really be honest and take a look at what's possible at your institution, and then prioritize the things that the group we're working with really feels are, maybe the top 3 things or the top 5 things. So yes, there's sort of a grandiose model of, in the perfect world, what would we all like to do? And then there's also what's realistic within the confines of your institution and the things you have to work with. And then we help you with that over the 4 years. And I will say that we do a lot of reassessment at the end so that we can look at the impact of systems change work that you've done with us on student outcomes. And we find actually that there's very little difference between the schools that have it all and the schools that may have pieces in terms of the efficacy and the impact it has on student outcomes. Both very positive. So don't let resources or capacity stand in your way, because there's work on all levels.
I see a lot of head nodding and fist bumping down there. So I want to follow up with you, Lori. Obviously, JED has been around for a while. The JED campus program has been around for a while, and you're more at the beginning stages of this project. But I wonder what strategies you've found most effective in getting institutions aligned on a shared vision, or what strategies are you thinking about using to get them aligned and keep them aligned on that vision?
Yeah, I think in so many ways we've been lucky that a sort of our shared experience helps with alignment right away. But I think the biggest thing that has benefited us is that we have taken the time that it often takes to really develop partnerships and really develop true collaboration. Rather than just sort of, we named each other as partners, but then we said, what does that mean? What does that mean to us? What is this collaboration going to look like? And so we're 14 months in and finalizing and preparing our next phase 2 initiatives, which I'm not going to unveil here. But I think you're getting a taste of if you were at the poster presentations last night. But through that time, it's been a lot of deep and rich conversations inside these working groups and then across the project lead teams and across the presidents. I think presidential leadership has been critical and key to this, but also our presidents know that they need their teams in this work with us, and they're empowering this work to be really ground up from those teams and coming out of the working groups, supporting the work that we're developing rather than a sense of, that top-down, sometimes this is what we have to be a part of and we'll just do these things. So I think taking that time and that richness, and then I think the other thing that's helped us is each working group has members from different campuses. It depends on what their strategic initiatives are and how many people they have to dedicate to this in this first year. Some have members on all working groups, some have members on 1 or 2 working groups. But those members reflect variable levels within the institution. So we have student life and faculty on every group. We have administrators, associate deans, provosts, career people, outdoor educators. So we have real blends within the working groups, even if they're from very different institutions. And so hearing higher education from their perspectives and their variable perspectives, which we also know sometimes You're not a prophet in your own land, so the ability to hear each other when it's cross-institutional and to really be able to learn and think about what that different perspective of the other person in the Zoom window is, has been a powerful experience. The voice that we're missing, and that some of us are getting through our campus work, but the collaborative hasn't tapped yet, and that has been intentional, is the student voice. And let me explain intentional. It is because we weren't sure where this collaborative was going, and how to be 100% sure that we would initiate things that would then be there a year later on the campus, get the next round of funding. And so we were very cautious about the ways we wanted to engage students and the promises that we wanted to make in this early phase. At the same time, we have seen a growth of the ways that each and every single campus is engaging their own students to generate voice up to the collaborative. And so next year we're adding student inputs explicitly into the next phase of our work.
Can I just add to this? Just because you raised 2 points that I flagged in my mind. And you talked about sort of the constitution of the different groups that come together to work in the collaborative. And it's very comparable, and I'm so happy to hear that, because when we do work with schools, we very much take what we call a public health approach, which means the responsibility for promoting student well-being as a campus-wide responsibility, not to be therapists, but to offer a warm hand, to develop that, the goal really to develop a culture of care and compassion on your campus, where there's no wrong door to walk through for support, right? And that takes everyone on the campus. And so, like you're talking about, the coming together of athletics and the dean of students and security and the counseling center. And oftentimes, when those folks come to the table together to work with us as a team, they frequently will say, gee, I've never even met you, number one, at some institutions, but in others, gee, I never knew about what was happening over there on that end of campus, or even in the department next door to me. So very powerful. But the other thing that really is the other underlying principle besides campus-wide is support from senior leadership. And so the fact that the project started with college presidents is very powerful. And I often say one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that it sort of woke college presidents up to the fact that mental health is a real thing, and it's a real thing on your campuses and impacts things like retention, graduation, ability to learn. And so we have found with the schools that we work with, if you don't have support from the top down and you don't take a campus-wide approach, it's very difficult to move the needle on these issues in any kind of long-term systemic way. So those are two really, I think, foundational building blocks to any initiative that you might undertake. So I just want to reinforce that.
Yeah, thank you. And I heard both top down and bottom up from the ground, and we hear that a lot with our work in the coalition. And I want to give you a chance before I open it up to audience questions to talk about that from your experience working with your other counterparts at other schools. Is that something that you're feeling as well?
Yeah, and I think one of the great privileges of working through these challenges is it's helped me stretch as a facilitator as well, and how we facilitate these experiences really does matter. I think one thing that we're trying to be very intentional within our cohorts and our thematic areas is create a sense of community, and realizing that this cohort comes from a place of wanting to serve our students and that part of our community in a very meaningful way, because the challenges are real. I mean, it's been ludicrous out there. And also understanding that we are having an experience within that as well. And so one thing that it's been a really great sort of fruit from this experience is creating communities of support within our groups as faculty and staff members. And, it's been interesting. I was talking with a student, we've been, not only with the political climate, but also in Western North Carolina, we've had some really rich storms come through in the past 6 months. And now we have forest fires. We're just trying to go through the list. And, it feels like oftentimes like the dimmer switch has been turned down on life, and the world seems a little dim. And one thing that we've found is these groups end up being sort of our candle areas. Like this conference, like there's a lot of little candles out here that together we're able to kind of come around and face all these challenges and see the community. And through that, find this work gets some more energy behind it, some more richness behind it, because it's something that we see in our lives that's necessary in the things that we're doing and the programs that we're structuring. And also with our students, that bleeds through. And I think just, we saw this morning that having a growth mindset, if you're also having intentionality behind your own mental health, that bleeds over to our student experience as well. And so I think that, we've been able to bring a lot of our experiential methodologies that we were able to really build into over that COVID online experience and bring that into these groups to where it feels a lot more like a community. It feels like much more of a space for us to be able to have a lot of this innovative work where we're able to dig into that richness from each person in our committees.
Great. So I'm going to open it up to any questions from the audience for anyone up here.
We have time for one, possibly two questions. So Amy, go ahead. Go ahead, Amy. Yeah, go ahead. You can do it.
Mine's very granular, and so now I apologize to everyone else. But it's mostly for you from Jed. So I know you have the crisis communication component. And so something that I've been thinking a lot about is when something does go wrong. So we've had several suicides. I've been at Mississippi 3 years now. And communicating that, and of course there's constraints with like familial preference and legal issues, et cetera. But like I just remember very vividly last year I had a student and we do a lot of humor and stuff in my class. I made a joke to one of the students and he's like, I'm sorry, and he's usually a very jovial guy. And he was like, I'm sorry, I'm just like reeling because his neighbor down the hall killed himself like that day. And that's how I found out about it. And so there's just been several times now where I hear about it incidentally, these instances. And so I'm wondering if you know about best practices or what you think about the lines of communication. And like on most of these situations, we don't hear anything at all from the university at all. And we're hearing from students, and I don't think that's the best, because I want to be able to, of course, have this empathy, and I would have changed the approach if I knew that had just happened.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate that that's what's happening on your campus. I will direct you, certainly postvention is key, and when we work with schools, we talk a lot about, in terms of the crisis response, postvention, and who communicates, how do you communicate? There's so many things to consider. We've strongly encouraged that every school has a postvention policy so that you're prepared. Everyone who knows they're going to have a role to play, what is that role? Right. Because typically when we face a crisis like that, for most of us, we kind of run around like chickens with our head chopped off, right? We're anxious, we kind of forget what we're supposed to do. So all the more reason to have a plan in advance, if possible, of anything happening, and know what your role is. I will recommend highly the postvention guide that was put out by I call it the Higher Education Mental Health Association. It's HEMA. I don't think that's really the right acronym. I mean, that's the acronym. I don't think I say the right words. But you can just Google postvention guide. It's also on our website. It will tell you from soup to nuts, who communicates, how do you communicate, who talks to the family, who deals with the dorm, do you have a memorial, do you not, like everything from soup to nuts. So please, it's free online or on our site. Take that. So it's a very important component of a mental health initiative overall.
And that was a great question, Amy. So, in response, thank you, Nancy. One more question. No pressure.
We did such a wonderful job that there's no questions to be had.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks, Dana.